Hello and welcome to the Nationals podcast. I'm political reporter Abby Garton-Crosby and I'm joined today with my colleague Lucy Jackson, and we're going to talk through some of the big stories of the day. But first of all, how are you doing? Because you're on a late shift today, so you just came in the office and I've grabbed you in here to talk about our stories.
I'm feeling nice and breezy. I've had a lovely chill morning and ready to get stuck in and have a nice natter.
Yeah, it's really good about back shift because you start at like 1 o'clock and then you get to have a relaxed morning. Unlike me, who is just the shambles in the morning. I'm always running about late, as you always see me running for the train at the train station. But yeah, I think we're going to start off today by talking about our front page, which is a very powerful front page focusing on the number of ceasefire violations that Israel have conducted since the ceasefire came into force on October the 10th. As you can see, there's quite a lot of that there. So we've got our colleague James spent a lot of time going through this and fact checking it all and making sure that everything was accurate, as did our subs, because you've got to give your sub editors credit.
Absolutely.
We also did a lot of work checking on this. So this is all fact checked to a T, and it goes to quite a lot of all the things that have happened. So, I mean, this has only been since October 10th, so we've only had 2 months that the ceasefire's been in, but we know that in that time, at least 356 people have been killed, including dozens of children, according to Palestinian authorities, and that takes the death toll in Gaza to over 70,000. So I just wondered if you could tell us a bit about this story and why the front page is so important.
I mean, obviously at the National we've been covering this a lot, but the majority of the world's media has so far really failed to acknowledge that this is, as our front page says, a ceasefire in name only. I mean, you know, it's not only full-on breaches of the ceasefire, but it's a continuation of Israel's genocide in Gaza. I mean, you know, obviously there's a lot of dates on there, but one in particular that really stuck out to me was 4 days after the ceasefire was called, Gaza health officials said that at least 9 Palestinians were killed by Israeli forces while trying to trek for their homes in northern Gaza, in northern Gazan city, and in southern Khan Yunis. You know, I mean, Israel's declined to open the Rafah border crossing, as the ceasefire agreement states should be happening. And they've also told the UN that they're basically halving the amount of aid trucks that they're going to let in, down to 300. I mean, it's astonishing really how this is allowed to go on. And yeah, as we say, much of the world's media is just sort of seeing that it's a ceasefire and is just going, all right then, and moving on.
Yeah, it's as if the ceasefire has been put in and therefore everything's okay.
Yeah.
Very few outlets who are persistently pushing this and making sure that people are aware of it. But there is a massive failure, I would say, on the part of a lot of other organisations who are just pretending as if, oh, there's a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Everything's good, when it's clearly not.
Yeah, I mean, as I feel like people hear the word ceasefire and then they go, oh, it must be over then. Yeah, as we can see, it obviously isn't. And I think as well, you know, Israel's targeting, you know, they're saying they're targeting Hamas militants and then targeting, you know, people that they are calling terrorists. And, you know, the vast majority of people that we're seeing being killed are children and women. Yeah.
I know that's one of the shocking things. I've seen quite a lot of reports about that the people who have been killed the most are women and children. It's civilians that are being killed majority of the time here. So, you know, it's not as if they're targeting terrorists and that's what they're saying, but that's not what's happening on the ground. So yeah, it's a very interesting one. We obviously at the National will continue to cover what's happening with Gaza and Israel. And yes, as you were talking about the Scottish Parliament's vote to boycott Israel, I did a story recently about the procurement rules, and there was kind of a push from the Greens for the Scottish Government to set out, you know, the rules around procurement for public bodies. I know you did an explainer on it for our social media channels, looking at that and how you know, that actually works in practice. And, you know, I've got an FOI on this, so in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, we'll find out what the Scottish Government has actually done to put in the ceasefire, whether that's anything or whether it's just been format. So it'll be really interesting. I'm very excited to get an FOI back. As you all know, I love a freedom of information request.
I mean, it was very interesting to read that because, you know, it felt like such a symbolic moment for us to see, you know, the Scottish Parliament vote for this. And then since then, you are so right, like what actually has been done and what can be done, and also what can the Scottish Parliament actually do and what is up to the UK government. I know you spoke a lot about Michael Gove and you know the laws and stuff that he brought in.
I did find out that has been dropped. So basically what it was the Tories under Michael Gove had tried to put in this piece of legislation, which I do not know the name of off the top of my head.
It was long.
But essentially it would make it prohibit devolved nations and local councils from putting in a boycott through procurement rules, essentially. And it was particularly against the BDS movement, so boycott, divestment and sanctions, to stop that from happening. So it was a Tory bill that went through, and it got to like the Lords Committee stage, and then the general election happened. Labour said they weren't going to go forward with it, and I asked the department, it was the Department of Level Up, and now I think it's the Department of Housing and Communities. So I asked them, and they said, no, they're not pushing forward for it, but basically it's still inappropriate to put in a boycott, but procurement is devolved to the Scottish Parliament.
Right.
So the Scottish, there's nothing really stopping the Scottish Government actually doing it. The UK Government probably wouldn't be happy with it.
What are they happy with?
But if the Make a Go bill had gone through, the UK Government would be able to fine the Scottish Parliament or like actually do something about it, but it doesn't seem as if there's anything they could actually do. So yeah, I'm going to keep pressing on that because I think that is very interesting. I know I did not realise that procurement rules is going to be in one of my knowledge bases this year, but you know that's how journalism works. But yes, we've got a lot going on, but we do have we had the Prime Minister and the Chancellor up in Scotland this week.
Did.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what Kier Starmer and Rachel Reeves were up to in Scotland. So Rachel Reeves was in Greenock yesterday visiting the Inchgreen Dry Dock. Now, what's interesting about that, we'll get to what Kier Starmer was up to in a wee minute, but I think what was really interesting about that is the Scottish Press Pact were told, rarely, because if anybody gets our coverage, we don't very often get to talk to UK Labour politicians when they're in Scotland. If they do come up, we really don't know that they're here, or we find out after they've been here, or we don't really get an invite. And particularly, I'm not on Scottish Labour's mailing list, let me tell you. I've tried. So, you know, we were told we'll get to put questions to the Chancellor in Greenock. And I think it was literally just as some of the press, my colleagues in the press pack were about to leave, that the Treasury started phoning around and saying, sorry, actually can't. And only one journalist was allowed to question Rachel Reeves, which was the Greenish Telegraph, Telegraph, which is our sister paper. Which what I find quite interesting about that is that they maybe think that a local paper won't go so hard on them, but we saw when Liz Truss spoke to the BBC local journalist that she got a bit of a hard time, and that is, local journalists are not to be underestimated, let me tell you. They know what they're doing. So I mean, what was your response to this? And obviously we'll get on to Reeves got some criticism from some other people as well, but I mean, what's your response to what we saw yesterday, Rachel Reeves pulling out in the last
I mean, entirely predictable. She's done it before.
Exactly.
And every single time that we've sort of seen it come through in our inbox that she's going to sort of be there, we either find out very, very last minute, and then there's obviously no little press call at the end of it to tell journalists where to go. I mean, yeah, entirely predictable. And it also I don't understand what they're so scared of. Like, why are they so scared of Scotland? I mean, the answer is that they've obviously done us really, really dirty, especially in the budget. But it beggars belief that, they just sort of traipse around within the exact same journalists all the time. And we don't get a chance to speak out. It's outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the Strategic Events Review when it was launched in Govan, and we were basically hung about for like 2 hours. And then just a select number of journalists were allowed to ask a question. I was like, is this a joke? Like, I would just come and stood here in a freezing cold giant hangar where a ship's being built at BAE Systems and not even allowed to ask a question. Because I was going to ask the Prime Minister about Gaza, and the fact that he was a humanitarian lawyer, is he not ashamed with the fact that nothing has been done? But this is not the first time that Scottish UK Labour ministers have hid from the press in Scotland. Remember when Angela Rayner was up, when she was Deputy Prime Minister, and our colleague Xander basically chased her around Hamilton. He literally, I think he interviewed her in a front garden. Was it not outside Davy Hamilton's house?
He did. There's a fantastic picture of him sort of leaning forward just in a random street somewhere. It's great.
You see little houses behind, because she was basically, I think, outside the campaign office, because word got out that Angela Rayner was coming. There's a lot of Palestine protesters, so she legged it. We've had Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy's been up. She ducked the press. Rachel Reeves, when she was up in May, a whiskey distillery, she wouldn't speak to the press then. So as you can tell, we're not surprised about it, but it is important that we have access to UK ministers, particularly, as you said, after the budget, because I ran into Anna Starmer on Buchanan Street earlier this week.
You did? I did.
Unfortunately, we're not allowed to share the video because he said he didn't want to be filmed, but it does exist. So I ran into him just after the budget, and I was asking him about Rachel Reeves being accused of lying. about what the OBR had said, the Office for Budget Responsibility, before the budget, and she'd kind of been accused of not really 100% being honest about the outlook for the UK's finances. And one thing he kept saying to me, and I wish I had known this at the time, but I was on the hoof and I just spotted him Buchanan Street and I just grabbed him for a minute. He wasn't happy about that, by the way, listeners. But he did speak to me, to be fair to him. So what I was asking him was, was he, what did he want to say about that? I mean, he just kept saying, "Oh, we're bringing down child poverty because they're scrapping the 2-child cap." But they can continue to say that. But what actually happened around that was, for one thing, a month into Keir Starmer being in Downing Street, he suspended 7 MPs for voting against the UK government on the 2-child cap, and that cap doesn't come in until April next year. So it hasn't lifted a single child out of poverty yet. And also, I've got a story up on the website today from a migrant charity called Praxis, who were talking about the new child poverty strategy that came out yesterday, which is why Keir Starmer was up, to kind of push that with Anna Sarwar. That just completely ignores the plight of migrant children, because there's the asylum seekers and that have no recourse to public funds, so they're not eligible for a lot of this, and 40% of children in poverty are migrants. So the UK government are really pushing this. Oh, we're solving child poverty, but not enough, I would argue. Yeah, so Rachel Reeves was in Greenock, as we'd kind of said at the top of that before I got into ranting about and start on child poverty. Sorry about that. So basically, while Reeves was in Greenock, she had a bit of she was blasted as being very selfish by some campaigners who basically said that Reeves had refused to let them say thank you to her for saving Inchgreen Dry Dock out in Greenock. So basically, a dry dock is a ship repair yard. It's very interesting because this Inchgreen one is one of Europe's biggest. And basically, it's just a big basin that you can fill with water. So you bring the ship in and then they kind of drain it and then they can do repairs on it. For those who don't know what a dry dock is, I would just throw that in there. But I mean, what did the group say, and kind of what was your reaction to this? Kind of, because we didn't really see this one coming. We were all too kind of focused on the press side of it.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously we had Starmer and Reeves both at the same day, but all of our attention was kind of just, it kind of hit us a bit out of nowhere. So it's basically activists from the campaign to save Inchgreen Dry Dock, losing the name. They basically said that they were refused the chance to meet with Labour politicians, including the Chancellor who visited the site. They basically said in a statement on social media, they said, "We went down to welcome the Chancellor on her visit to Inchgreen and say thank you. However, we weren't allowed to see or talk to her, and our Labour MP, Martin McCluskey, and Council Leader Stephen McCabe failed to acknowledge our small group, even though there were 45 minutes before her arrival there. Today is the 8th anniversary of the formation of our campaign, and it's a sad reflection of the Inverclyde Labour Party's 2 leading members who totally ignored our community group."
Yeah, it doesn't come across well, does it? They were not happy. Obviously, we have a full write-up on this on the website, but it's interesting that not only is the Chancellor kind of ducking the press, she doesn't even want to speak to people who are trying to be nice to her. Like, they're trying to say thank you to her for helping with their campaign, and there's still just no...
I mean, who does she want to talk to?
No, nobody at this point, unless it's the Times who do like nice pieces about what it's like ahead of the budget. But yeah, as I said, Keir Starmer was also up in Scotland last night. So first of all, he was visiting a community centre with Anna Sarwar before he went on to the Scottish Labour's Christmas Gala in Glasgow, where there were Palestine protests outside. Again, that was another press event that we found out quite late on in the day, that was at 5 o'clock on a Thursday, when quite a lot of our Christmas nights out are scheduled this week. Let's just put it that way. Not that we wouldn't go anyway, because our colleague James went along, as he did. But yeah, I thought one of the interesting things that came out of that was Keir Starmer was basically saying that Anna Sarwar's fingerprints are all over the budget here in Scotland. And I don't know if Keir Starmer really Keir Starmer was probably trying to make it look good for Anna Sarwar, but he has just given a literal, really easy hit for the SNP to now ring that over him. Yeah, right up till the election, because the outcomes of the budget, it was shambolic. It was all over the place. Because right before Anna Sarwar kind of started pushing the child poverty angle, because he knew it was coming. Yeah, but up until then he was quite quiet on it, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, the SNP out of this because of the windfall tax, which I've written quite a lot about this. I'm not really going to get into the technicalities of the windfall tax of oil and gas companies. I could, but I won't. But I will be here for hours. But basically, right up ahead of the budget, all these industry bodies were saying, if you don't get rid of this windfall tax, then we're going to lose thousands of Scottish jobs. The Chancellor didn't mention it. It stays as it is. It's about combined with corporation tax and other supplementary, it's about 70% 70+% definitely. Don't have the numbers to hand. The oil and gas companies pay, and they say basically you're taxing us so much that we're going to have to quit jobs.
Yeah.
But climate campaigners obviously dispute this and say that they should be paying their way for it, and they should be putting money into just transition to help those workers move in to jobs. So and the SNP basically said Starmer's been thrown right in it by his boss. I told you they went with it. I mean, why wouldn't they?
Open goal, right?
I know. They said the truth's out that he's just as capable of slashing tens of thousands of jobs in Scotland as Starmer and Reeves are. Voters won't forget this. Because right after the budget, Harbour Energy announced that they were cutting 100 jobs, which was on top of about 350 that they'd already announced. So, and the story I was going to ask you about before, because I'm not going to get into the technicalities of oil and gas. I will one day. But basically,
have an hour-long
special of me talking about oil and gas, because this is one of my specialties for anybody who reads the stories that I write. So basically, Starmer also kind of weighed in on this row about Nigel Farage and bilingual Scottish school kids. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit about what is going on.
I mean, anyone who's on social media has probably seen this video go around. I mean, it is vile. Just to sort of give a little bit of background about what Farage said, he basically claimed in a video on Reform UK's social media channel that those who don't principally speak English as their first language, he said that they're culture smashing Glasgow.
Wow.
Basically just attacking school children in the city. And he was citing Scottish government figures that almost 1 in 3 Glasgow school kids do not speak English as a first language. Now, the video has been widely condemned as racist. I mean, we'll get onto it in a minute, but we've even had like the First Minister weigh in. But I mean, this is what Farage said. He said, "This is not diversity as the left always preach. This actually is the cultural smashing of Glasgow. It's turning it into a completely different city in every way. My question is, who voted for this? Who told anybody in Scotland this was actually happening?" I mean, it's just outrageous, and it is racist, and the comments have been widely condemned as racist. I mean, we've literally heard people from all sides of the political spectrum. We've had, the SNP, we've got the Greens, we've had a Glasgow Greens councillor, Blair Anderson, he represents the Partick East and Kelvindale ward. He said that the comments are dangerous and a sign that the party just wants to bash immigrants. He said that Farage going after Glasgow's children for knowing languages other than English would be laughable if it wasn't so dangerous. And then, as I said, we've had John Swinney also weighed in yesterday, which I covered. He basically said that the comments demonstrate that Farage is a purveyor of racist views. And he said that the comments are just quite simply racist. That's what they are. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, when I first saw the video come on my timeline, I hadn't seen it yet. I just saw the caption. I just kind of rolled my eyes and just, of course, he's like, it's just Farage. It's silly Farage. And I think we have a tendency to sort of dismiss a lot of what he says sometimes because he's just a clown. Like, he is.
Yeah.
And then actually watching the video, it's absolutely vile. I mean, and it's especially hypocritical given that his own children, he's married, his wife is German. His kids are bilingual. His kids speak German. And for him to say this as, the Scottish Languages Act has passed in Holyrood, it got Gaelic and Scots were given official status on St Andrew's Day. Yeah. As there's all of that, and obviously he's also going to be in Falkirk this weekend.
Yes, which we'll be covering.
We will be covering in extensive detail. It's absolutely horrific that, this is where we've come to.
Yeah, it's quite obvious that he's really playing into far-right stereotypes there, because not only is visiting Falkirk where there's been protests outside of hotels housing asylum seekers that have been organised by groups that we know are being organised by far-right agitators. We know that's part of it. There's been very strong reporting on this from us and from other titles as well. And I think it's just part of that. It is playing into that right-wing, far-right narrative that there's some sort of invasion happening and that, the UK is changing beyond repair. And targeting school children for being able to speak more than one language is incredibly low, to be honest.
I wish that I could speak more than one
language. So do I. I've been trying to learn French for about 10 years and I can't do it.
Yeah, I language is just such a wonderful thing. And for kids, because obviously, like, the younger you learn a language, the more it sticks with you. I mean, to be able to speak more than one language at that age is incredible.
Yeah,
and
it's apparently it's really good for development as well, and really good for being able to learn and being able to adapt. I mean, a lot of my friends are bilingual and speak more than one language. That's like Italian. I was in Italy with an Italian; it was very handy as well. But and learning different languages is like it's a really good cultural part. And obviously, we know that there's a big push to ensure that Gaelic and Scots are respected, because there's no detail on what these languages are that Faraj is talking about. But the implication is that it's probably Arabic languages and languages from Muslim migrants and things like that is what he is not outright saying, but that is what he is in fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for him to say that as well as he's coming to Falkirk, it's to
rile people up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's outstanding. Like,
our colleague Steph, I don't know, I'm pretty sure she's got it. She's doing it today, or had done it yesterday. She's spoken to an expert. No, she's doing it today, sorry. So our colleague Steph, it'll be up there today. I can't remember what she's doing it, but she spoke to a bilingual expert about this, basically kind of calling Faraj out for it, which is really interesting to get that sort of perspective from an expert on those sorts of things. So that will be available to read on our website for those who are interested later on today.
What I will also Oh my gosh. What I will also say is Steph also did a brilliant piece yesterday interviewing a refugee who came to Glasgow, and he basically talked about what he would say if he could speak to Nigel Farage, and it's a fantastic read. It's on our website, so I
think you could also listen to the full interview on the podcast as well, which it was very good. And he was a very lovely man. I ran into him, brought him a cup of tea yesterday. But yeah, so just to finish off, and finally for today, is the Greens have set out some more of their membership numbers. So they're now sitting at a historic high. So the Scottish Greens, not the Green Party of England and Wales, very different, as we all know. But they're basically saying that more than 1,800 people have joined since April, which brings their total membership up to a record high of 9,235. Now, I know you've done a little bit on this before, so I mean, you kind of maybe got a better overview of the numbers, but there is a bit of a steady growth going on in the Greens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the previous record was just after the independence referendum, because after that took place, there was a huge surge in membership then, as you'd expect. I think
the SNP got a huge boost at that point as well.
Yeah. And then since Ross Greer and Gillian Mackay were elected co-leaders, they have seen a surge in membership then as well. Obviously, some of that is being helped by, even though they're not affiliated with each other, a lot of that is, part of it anyway, is being helped by Zach Vancy south of the border. I mean, we've seen down south what he's doing there with membership.
Yeah, they've had a huge membership. So the Greens up here are a little bit slower, but they're obviously kind of getting a little bit of a boost. And obviously, we know we've got the election coming up. So I mean, do you think that bodes well for them ahead of the holidays?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at the Scottish Greens conference, their autumn conference in Edinburgh not that long ago, and when I spoke to Ross and Gillian there at the time, they set out their goal of having 10,000 members by the election. I mean, going at the rate that they are, I think that's plausible. I think that's realistic. And you can tell that they're obviously ecstatic with the success that they're having. I mean, Gillian Mackay said that she's grateful to everyone that's joined, and that she said also that the party's grown along with its branches in every part of Scotland, which I thought was quite interesting, because obviously there's quite a base of Green supporters in Glasgow and in the Central Belt in particular, but what we have seen is that there is an uptick all across Scotland.
Yeah, during the local elections, they got a couple of councillors more out with the Central Belt. It's kind of slowly, a little bit better. But very interesting to see what happens, because obviously the Greens I think they're only running very few constituencies. Maybe even the only one I know of is Holly Bruce in Southside, who's a councillor in Glasgow. She's running for the constituency there, but they target the list of the regions to get MSPs, and it'll be interesting to see if they do actually, because previous polling has put them at returning kind of a record number of MSPs, and that all feeds into John Swinney's SNP majority gambit for a referendum, second referendum. If does a pro-independence majority count or is it just SNP? Because previously a pro-independence majority has really not cut through. But if the Greens had a lot of MSPs, we don't know. We could see.
I mean, some polls have put them at quite staggering number of
double digits, which never hit before.
Which I've speaking to people in the party, I think a few of them are quite skeptical about just how much they can trust the polling that we have seen. But I think there's definitely there's definitely optimism there about, I think they think they will do well.
Yeah.
And I think given the membership numbers, I think it's quite plausible to see why.
Yeah, I know. And I was speaking to Jonathan Shaffer, but he doesn't think that your party are going to be much of a threat to them ahead of Holyrood. If your party can get enough things in place ahead of that, because we only have around the last 6 months now, aren't we?
Oh my God.
I know. Brace yourself.
It's like yesterday since the general election.
I know. I joined the National right before the last Holyrood election, so I'm like, my God.
Wow.
I've been here for 5 years. But I was thrown into the fire this time. I'll be much more prepared for this election, so that'll be better. But yeah, so thank you to everybody for joining us today. Obviously, all the stories that we talked about are on our website if you want to have a look at that. If you want to like and subscribe to our podcast, that also helps us a lot. And we will be here next week with some of our other colleagues to talk through the stories and what's been going on. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, guys.